Hello and welcome to No More Week 2024. Silicon Saviors or Digital Threats, exploring tech's impact on domestic and sexual violence. This session, Tech Innovators Roundtable. Now, before we begin, I'd like to go over some general housekeeping. You are signed in as a participant and your camera and microphone are disabled. Today's session will be recorded for future reference, so don't worry if you miss a bit, you can go back and watch it again. Now, the contents of this session may be triggering for some, so if you'd like to reach out for support, you can find a link in the chat to the No More Global Directory. It's a global directory of specialist domestic abuse and sexual violence services. So thank you so much for your cooperation. Thank you for being here. And I truly hope that you enjoy today's session. So firstly, what I'd like to do is introduce our speakers. So our first one is Erica Olson. She's the Director of Safety Net Senior. Then the next is Elise Maiolino, and she's the Head of Women's Safety Policy at Uber. Then we have Lisa Felton. She is the director of the Vodafone Foundation. And with her is Gemma Gorn. She's the program lead at Vodafone Foundation. Lisa Dank is with us also. She is the Global Issue Policy Manager for Trust and Safety at TikTok. And then we have Tanasha Manaka, who is the Director of Social Advocacy at Match Group. Lastly, but by no means least, we also have Pamela Zabala, who is the CEO of No More. My name is Madeline McQueen, and I sit on the board of No More. I'm also an executive coach, a speaker, a host, and I am the panelist moderator for this session. So let's get straight to it. Today, we've listened to advocates and survivors from diverse corners of the globe, and they've been sharing their experiences of technology enabling abuse. Now, while many of the stories resonate with common themes, each carries the distinctive imprint of its country or its community. So my first question goes to Pamela. Pamela, what challenges are presented to organizations dealing with this issue globally?
Hi, Madeline. Thank you very much for hosting today, and thank you for everybody that has joined and that has joined throughout the day. There are many challenges when it comes to tech and gender-based violence. One of the most important ones is the issue that it is hard to keep up with it. It is ever changing. And so it's brought in the last 10 years, for example, since I'm a practitioner, a whole host of other ways in which abuse is kind of exercised. And that is a true challenge for organizations frontline, because you can never kind of keep up with staffing and those kind of changes. I think another of the big challenges is when you hear today, it did not matter where it is. People kind of agree that, there's a good momentum and that communication is great. But those global networks are not well built in the gender-based violence sector. They tend to be either country and at most regional. And that is partially because of how the sector itself is funded, right? It looks at delivering frontline service and it looks local. So this idea that we're in different ways uniting a bit more is great. And I would say also that the true collaboration that comes with doing policy work, looking at product safety, and looking at communications with corporations is recent. Right? Before, 20 years ago, it was just checks that, foundations were giving out for people to deal with issues. So true joint working is a new thing. So there you have several challenges, but, very hopeful today with, everything we've heard.
Love that. It's multi-complex, but it's also multi-solutional. So I like that. So today we've rightfully centered on the experiences of survivors, yet, which often happens, we kind of overlook discussing the perpetrators of abuse, kind of the core. So, Erica, as director at Safety Net, how do you think that we could ensure that we stay ahead of those who choose to use technology to stalk, to harass, to harm? How can we stay ahead of it?
Thank you for the great question. It is a hard question. I will just start by acknowledging that it is truly a very difficult task. Unfortunately, abusive individuals can be incredibly creative. We've seen tech manipulated in ways that we would have never thought of. But I think that one of our best bets, one of our best opportunities to actually try to stay ahead of it is really in the tech design space. That's one of the biggest categories of work that I think exists for us to be able to successfully stay ahead of it. When we are looking at tech design, unfortunately, so much tech is still designed with the idea that those you share your life with, those that you share your home with, your devices, your property, that those individuals are safe to you. And that's often not the case, as we know. Security and privacy are often designed more with stranger danger scenarios, and those are really different threat models. We need to consider the impact of intimate partner violence and intimate partners that have access to our information, to our devices, and what that means. So I think that the tech design is the first and foremost a very large bucket for being able to stay ahead of it. Because when we design technology from the start with intimate partner scenarios in mind, and with broad, really strong privacy and consent foundations, then you already will set up technology from the place that you have fewer options for misuse and more support for when it does happen. So I think that's a really big piece of it. And then I think that there are other considerations for setting and establishing norms, and also creating a space where we're all just more empowered and confident in our own tech. If we want those who are working with survivors to be able to engage in conversations around increasing privacy, increasing security, then we need to understand our technology in a way that we feel empowered to be part of those conversations.
So true. I think we don't realize sometimes what we have in our hands with the technology that we have. So building upon this discussion, today we've heard numerous of reports from around the world highlighting the significant challenge of reporting incidents of tech facilitated abuse to law enforcement. I mean, responses vary with, some encounters marked by dismissiveness, while others attribute blame to insufficient legislation. So considering the context of the USA, Erica, what have been your experiences with the legal response to tech-facilitated abuse?
Another quite a big question. Experiences really do vary across the country because so much of the legal landscape is a state-specific breakdown in terms of what is illegal where. Unfortunately, though, I can say, many survivors do experience that dismissiveness that you speak of, either because the tech-related tactics are just minimized from the beginning, so they're not getting the attention, the investigation to start with. Sometimes I think that there are scenarios that are coming up where survivors are trying to access services and help, and people believe that what they are claiming that the abusive person is doing is just impossible. And again, I think all of that does go back to that understanding. The more we understand technology ourselves, the more we're comfortable with ourselves, the more we address that kind of issue. We also know that departments across the United States are lacking a lot of technology knowledge and the tools to investigate. And even in spaces and bigger cities where they might have departments might be equipped with some of their own technology in order to investigate, say, look at, scan cell phones for stalkerware and things like that. A lot of that is not, those tools are not always given to the teams that are working on intimate partner violence, sexual assault, and stalking. They're often isolated to the parts of the department that are working on financial fraud cases and things like that. And we hear those complaints, not just from victim advocates and survivors, but also from law enforcement. So we definitely also hear all the time that we need more laws. And while there are certainly gaps in the legal landscape as it exists right now, what we see is that the majority of technology facilitated abuse can be responded to with existing laws. It's typically not a matter of the laws not existing, but rather of them not being used. There are very specific scenarios, though, types of technologies and types of abusive tactics where there is a gap in the laws. But for a lot of much of the country, laws are designed to address the abusive behavior and not the technology specifically. So the laws that address harassment, impersonation, surveillance should apply. They're just not being used as much as they should be.
So I'm hearing limited knowledge, limited tools, limited understanding, and limited use of the tools that actually are available. So when we think about this and we talk about this, how vital is it that, Pamela, if you can answer first, and then Erica, how vital is it for you both that you work alongside tech companies to enhance safety?
I think if I start there, it is very important. And hearing a lot of what was said today, if I can kind of resonate that a little bit, being many kind of non-for-profits tend to work usually in HR related these issues or, in communication campaigns. But the exciting thing really is in product development, in safety development, right? In supporting safety by design, where, some of those concerns that Erica spoke about, right? It's not only about strangers, accessing your product, but it's also your family members, that kind of input. What we were hearing today is regionally, right? Sometimes products are designed with kind of a global view, but not a regional view. We had in India, people were saying, for example, how some, symbols that people mean would actually be caste discrimination. But actually, if that is done in Silicon Valley, there's no idea that means anything, right? So it is very important, therefore, to work very closely with tech companies to enable that kind of knowledge for teams to execute. My experience is that once you start working and you tell a team that this is happening, they're actually quite keen for things like that not to take place. But there has to be joint knowledge and joint growth.
Thank you. Erica.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that those partnerships and collaborations are incredibly important, and I believe that they are very much a two-way relationship. We rely on our tech company partners to help us, learn and understand the technology better, to become empowered and informed ourselves, so that we can then pass that along, help victim service providers to build up capacity so they can help survivors feel empowered and comfortable with their own technology. And we want to be able to provide information about what it looks like to be trauma informed and how that changes how you might communicate or interact with survivors, how you might think about threat models when designing technology. So I think that they are incredibly important all the way around.
It's so true. It's again, it goes with starting with this in mind at the very beginning rather as an afterthought. And again, awareness. Then it's two-way awareness. How are we aware of the technology, and how are they aware of the issues? So I'd like to move on to Elise. You are the head of women's safety policy at Uber. So how have Uber adapted and improved your products to ensure the safety of users and drivers?
Yes, well, thank you. Thanks for that question. Thanks so much for having us. At Uber, we embed safety in everything that we do. And it's a company value for us. We're committed to making sure that everyone who's using our platform is safe. And over the years, we've been on a safety journey as a company, and we've made a commitment to kind of continuing to increase and raise the bar on safety. And so we've taken action kind of in a number of different ways to help improve safety on our platform. And there's a number of, I guess, ways in which we think about safety that I think inform our approach. So firstly, we pioneer and we innovate when it comes to safety features. So I'm very happy to talk about that today, but I think thinking about what safety tools and technology that you can have available for users on your platforms is really important. So I think that's first. I think secondly, we've developed and invested in comprehensive education for our users on topics related to personal safety. And we've partnered with experts and advocates on some of that education. In fact, I think advocates and expert partnership is really core to a lot of our safety work at Uber. We wouldn't be where we are today if we didn't have advice from folks who are on the ground and who can assist with thinking through really challenging topics and issues and finding ways to integrate their expertise into the work that we're doing at our company. We also work with law enforcement. We have a dedicated public safety liaison team. They are made up of former law enforcement professionals who work to proactively assist in the event of an emergency or in the event of an investigation. So that's another kind of pillar in some of our work. And then perhaps I'll also just mention that when in the event that something goes wrong, we are very committed to responding with empathy and care in times of need. And I think we've done a lot of work to think about how to do that in a survivor and trauma-informed way. And although safety incidents continue to be incredibly rare on our platform, and the vast majority of trips, 99.9%, end without a safety incident at all, we know that one is too many. And so when something does go wrong, being there to provide access to resources, support, et cetera, is really important. So I think one of the reasons I'm really encouraged by the conversation that we're having here today is because I think sometimes we think about companies as kind of being these isolated entities. And in fact, companies are part of the social fabric, and they are not immune to societal issues like gender-based violence, like sexual assault, et cetera. And just like governments and just like civil society, we have a role to play in preventing this from occurring, in prevention and in response. So it can be really difficult for companies to do this work alone. And so I think finding ways to learn from each other in conversations like this and finding ways to work together are really important, because there's always more work to be done. We have not figured out. Sure. So there's always more work to be done.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I think as a really important point, if you think about really good leaders, they normally buy in or get in experts in things that they're not great at. So I love to hear that you, as an organization, are pulling in the experts to help you fill your gaps so that you can have the best possible platform for your users. And definitely, that working together and not seeing each other as competition, but also how can we be allies in order to share the knowledge and make the change in this area is absolutely crucial. So Tash, you're the director of social advocacy at Match Group, a different kind of platform. How have Match adapted and improved, its products to ensure the safety of users, particularly within online spaces where vulnerabilities may arise?
Yeah, thank you, Madeline, and thank you to Know More for inviting us to sit on this panel. It's truly a pleasure. I want to echo, I think, some of the things Elise said, and the fact that everyone in this conversation is really uplifting the value of partnerships in many different forms. I will say I'm a little biased because I manage the safety partnerships for Match Group, but I do think that that work is really key to all of our safety initiatives across the board. So for us, it's really about engaging with those third-party experts, NGOs, and survivors to inform the work that we're doing. And I will say, just personally, as someone who comes from a long history of working in nonprofit, addressing sexual and domestic violence as a survivor myself, I think it's a testament to the company that they're actually hiring people that come from the sector who have some of these lived experiences and embedding those individuals within our organization. So I maybe can give a couple of examples of the ways that we've worked with partners over the years to adapt some of our products. One is we had an ongoing partnership with RAIN, who houses the National Sexual Assault Hotline here in the US, to really audit and review our sexual assault reporting flow across all of our platforms. And so this was looking at the ways that people who have experienced some form of sexual harm on one of our platforms can report, making sure that the way to do that is easily accessible, is trauma-informed, is survivor-centered, and is using language that is clear and sensitive. We also, I want to uplift one of my favorite features that was also informed by feedback from survivors in the community, which is called Are You Sure? And so this is a feature where if someone is sending a message, it uses AI to detect any harmful language in that message and proactively intervene to kind of warn the sender that that message may be offensive. So a pop-up comes up in app and it says, are you sure you want to send this? You know, the other person might find this offensive. And it gives the sender an opportunity to edit or to delete that message. And I really love this because I think, as everybody on this panel is aware and probably listening, sexual harassment is one of the biggest issues we're facing as a society, you know, particularly under the umbrella of sexual violence. And it's such a broad swath of behavior that it can be really tricky to address. And when we're thinking about an online dating platform where we have people of all ages and backgrounds using that platform, people who are dating for the first time, you know, people who may have used terminology 20 years ago and it was acceptable then, but maybe that language has changed now. You know, this type of tool gives people an opportunity to engage in some real-time learning and behavior change. And so it really brings that prevention element in real time. And we found that it's actually been quite effective. Since we've launched the tool in 2021, more than 500 million messages have either been edited or deleted. So, and if it's not, on the other end, the receiver of that message gets a pop-up that says, does this bother you? And it gives them an opportunity to report that language in real time if they choose to.
These are great ways of dealing with this. Absolutely fabulous. I love that. Are you sure? You know, it's a question that we definitely need to ask ourselves in many situations, and certainly in this one. So for both of you, both, you know, Elise and Tasha, Elise, I'll come to you first. You know, following on, can you highlight any innovative features or initiatives your platform or tech company has implemented to address the unique challenges of domestic and sexual violence? Now, obviously, Tasha, I've heard that Are You Sure? I'm just wondering, from an Uber point of view, Elise, if there's anything that you guys have that you're willing to share.
Yeah, so in my first response, I kind of alluded to the fact that we have a number of kind of core safety features that are embedded into our platform and that are available to users, and we take really seriously continuing to innovate and continuing to leverage our technologies to help keep Uber users safe. Some of these you might be familiar with, but within the app, there is a safety toolkit, which allows users to explore and learn about the safety features that are available. So the next time you're on an Uber trip, open your app and click on the blue shield button. And that blue shield button will give you the chance to take a look at some of the safety features that are available. Some of the ones that are particularly useful, especially in an emergency or in the event of just thinking proactively about what steps you can be taking to potentially prevent an incident from occurring. There's an in-app emergency button, so you can click on an in-app emergency button, and that'll connect you to in-country emergency services and provide accurate data location information to first responders. So in the event that you need assistance, they can respond to the situation. You'll also find an option to share your trip or follow my ride, and that allows users to share their trip and their live location with loved ones or with folks in their lives who can follow their journey in real time. So they can see when you've left, when you've made it to your destination, and where you are along the way. And then all of our trips have phone number anonymization. So as you're communicating with users, you are not revealing your personal or private information. And then I think lastly, I'll just highlight that, and this is kind of an exciting area, but we're continuing to invest in safety media, things like dash cam, audio recording, things that promote accountability and kind of deter bad behavior from occurring, hopefully to reduce safety incidents. But I think that also helps to provide support for survivors in the event that there is an incident that occurs. And in addition to an incident report, you would like to submit some type of safety media information to accompany that. And I think that can really help with sentiment and trust in terms of our platform. So those are just some of the innovative features and technology that we're working on. We're always looking to do more. And we want to make sure that folks have support at their fingertips in the event that they need it.
These are great. Thank you so much for sharing them. Tasha, is there anything else that you've got? You already shared some of yours. I'm just wondering if there's any other things, any other features or initiatives that you'd love to share.
Yes, definitely. I'd like to highlight, I think, a couple of programs that really showcase, again, the way in which our organization is working with community partners. Because Erica's point, I think how we're really going to create changes is in this area. It's by not operating in silos, and it's really through working together and enhancing that kind of knowledge sharing and addressing sexual and domestic violence in a cohesive and collective way across sectors. And so a couple of recent initiatives we did that I felt like really embodied this was first actually partnering with No More to create a healthy dating guide, very specific to online dating and incorporating all kind of the nuances that you might experience as you're navigating a dating journey that maybe has started online. We did this across 9 different countries. We promoted it both on No More's website and with an app across multiple of our platforms and in local languages. And it was very cool. In Sweden, even they printed physical copies of the guide and distributed those in local clinics. And so it was a great way to kind of create an immersive experience, educational experience for people. We also have what is, in my mind, a very innovative program happening in India with Tender, the Tender team. So they actually created a Let's Talk Consent program, which started with creating something that they called Tender Safe Space, where they brought together local NGOs in India who were focused on gender-based violence, prevention, and gender equity to kind of listen and hear from them. What do you see as the most pressing issues when it comes to sexual and domestic violence within region, and what can Tender do to help to address and prevent some of these challenges? And what came from that was the development of a Let's Talk Consent microsite that has all kinds of really excellent informational videos and resources and tips about consent. They expanded that even further and partnered with a local NGO to create an entire curriculum around consent and funded that NGO to actually go to college campuses in India and do education with students in real life, sharing information about how to be safe and protect your privacy on Tender, while also feeling empowered to use that technology, but also sharing some of that foundational information about consent and healthy relationships that we know, is just a need across the board. And then just recently, the next iteration of that particular project was they actually created a Let's Talk Consent free online course that's open to anyone. So I will share with the moderators here some links to some of those different tools and guides because they're open to everyone. And we would love people to kind of look into them and give us feedback.
No, that's great. I think it's a great idea. Maybe what we'll do is collate some of the things that are here and some of the things that have been said and be able to share those as a resource. I think, especially some of the things that we've heard about Uber, there's some of the things that we've heard about Match Group, and the things that we can then implement that people may not be actually aware of. So I love that we've got these innovations that are happening. And that the underlying message is education across the board and collaboration. So Lisa, you are the director of the Vodafone Foundation, and the Vodafone Foundation has shown itself as an exemplary employer in responding to domestic violence. like your policies, the research, the support of IDA have inspired organizations globally. So your Tech for Good commitment to investing in app technology it's remarkable. Now we know that you've built, you know, successfully built apps to support survivors of domestic abuse and vulnerable individuals. So since you have this impactful body of work in this area, could you share some of the insights into this program of work that you have that's acclaimed?
Absolutely. Thank you very much for the question, and thank you very much for the invitation to be here today. I'm really delighted to be presenting with this group. So as you said, at Vodafone, our reason for being is really connecting for good, especially at the Vodafone Foundation. And this is for our customers, our colleagues, the communities in which we work with, and our co-partners like you, who are so important for us in delivering the difference that we make. And we have a huge focus on gender, on inclusion, and using technology to both make sure everyone is connected and that we provide those technology solutions to make sure no one is left behind. And we do this across a range of different areas. As you know, we have a target to ensure 14 million young people have access to digital skills. We provide those digital skills programs in Europe and Africa. We're connecting over 75 million women in emerging markets to mobile services where they haven't had that chance before. That really empowers them and gives them the freedom to do so much more. We provide emergency transport for women in childbirth, which is reducing maternal mortality by more than 38%. So we do a range of different things which connect for good. But as you said, one of our key programs, our key focus areas is in relation to domestic abuse. And it's such an important area. We all know 1 in 3 women experience domestic abuse during their lifetimes. And we've been in this area for a really long time. For over 15 years, we've been providing technology to really help survivors of domestic abuse access advice, support, and solutions. Our original support was focused on women at very high risk. So we provided an emergency handset that these women could use that would connect them immediately to emergency support with the police. And we worked very close with the police on these solutions, which is now embedded in police response actions in quite a few countries now. But we've also used our technology to connect over 2.8 million people affected by domestic abuse and hate crime through our apps and through our awareness campaigns. This includes Bright Sky, which is a safe, easy to use app and website, which provides support and information on domestic abuse. Bright Sky is really for anyone who is experiencing domestic abuse or even is worried about somebody else and wants to know how to help. And it's available across 13 countries. But we don't just stop externally. We also provide support internally, as you said, through our policies and by supporting other companies to do more. So in 2019, off the back of a whole raft of research, as an employer, we launched our domestic abuse policy to support survivors at work. This includes training managers and HR on how to support survivors, offering paid safe leave, specialist referrals, safety plans at work, and financial support. A year later, obviously, we found ourselves in lockdown with the COVID-19 crisis. And the pandemic, as we all know, created an absolute pressure cooker for domestic violence and abuse. And we saw a huge uptake in Bright Sky and our other domestic abuse apps during that time, a 73% weekly increase in the UK alone after the lockdown was announced. As a result, we again adapted our policies, making sure we retrained staff to know how to spot the signs when people were on Zoom calls like this or hybrid working, and we provided safe spaces at work for people at risk, which makes a huge amount of difference when you're trapped at home, potentially with a perpetrator. So I think, what I'd really like to echo is the messages from Elise and Tasha around partnership, around learning from best practices, because we really believe that together we can do a lot more that really drives scale and impact. So just two quick examples of that. So one is we are supporting Hestia, who's developing Bright Sky in making online safe spaces available. So this is a widget that we embed in our websites that then links people to essential information about domestic abuse. And currently there's 68 websites that are also using this safe spaces link from their commercial websites, providing support to over 2.1 million people. Now, anyone can use this. Hestia is making this available to anyone who wants it. So I'd really encourage businesses who are watching this to reach out and to embed this onto their commercial websites. The second thing I'd like to share is, as today, UN Women released new research, which we had supported, showing the extent of progress within companies in supporting their employees in relation to domestic abuse. It's a really strong call for action for greater collaboration to normalize workplace support, reduce stigma, and accelerate progress. And the report stated that collectively, if the entire FTSE 100 were to address this issue for their employees, it could impact the lives of over 5 million employees across the world, which is an incredible number. So we'd really encourage all businesses to reach out to us. We can share details about all of these programs, to put a safe space link on your website, and to work together as much as you can to share best practice and increase impact.
This is great. I remember when Bright Sky was an idea. Yes, I go back that far. And it was just an idea. And I also remember when it was launched. And I remember in a few months in, we had about 2,000 downloads. I used to be on Hestia's board. And it's so interesting just to hear the numbers, that when you make a decision to make a difference in the world, how just by using technology, you can impact so many people's lives positively if we use it in the right way. So it's really encouraging to hear. What I will say is that, we've got people asking in the comments and we'll start sharing, which is, where can you find Bright Sky? So I'm going to ask Jemima to answer that. There is another one, it is also about the widget, and that how do they get in touch for that? And we may actually, what we might do is again add that to our crib sheet of information. But Jemima, firstly Bright Sky, and I have another question for you.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Pamela, for hosting us today. It's brilliant to be here with everyone. So I manage the apps program here at Vodafone Foundation, which obviously includes Bright Sky, which I'll be focusing on in a minute. But I just sort of want to take a step back and explain where our apps portfolio came from. So as Lisa mentioned, at Vodafone Foundation, we connect for good, which means we use our technology for the betterment of societies. So about 10 years ago, to address the global problem of domestic abuse, we set up an Apps Against Abuse program, which is a portfolio of apps that are designed to enable people to live a life free from abuse. So they all serve the same sort of core focus of supporting people impacted by domestic abuse and sexual violence. Some are just, in one country, and some are a lot more global. So collectively, we've supported 2.8 million people through this program so far across 20 countries. And our biggest and most international app is Bright Sky, which of course Lisa's introduced. So Bright Sky is a free and easy to use app and website for anyone who's worried about domestic abuse. So it can be, it's tailored for you as yourself, or if you're worried about somebody else, it sort of serves those two purposes. It's got multiple features, which I won't go through all of them today, but sort of to mention a few. There's lots of educational content on there, specifically about things like forms of abuse, because we know from research that often people don't actually know what kind of domestic abuse they might be experiencing, or for their friend. There's also assessment tools that can help someone spot the signs of domestic abuse. And finally, there's a directory of specialist support services across all of the markets that we're live in. So how this works is you can type in your postcode or location that you like, and all of the specialist support service will show up on a map in your area. So in terms of numbers, in terms of success to date, we've supported nearly 1 million people through Bright Sky now. So, you know, a bit different from the 2,000 at the beginning that you mentioned, Madeline. We're across 13 markets in 4 continents, and it's now available in 26 languages. And I think 2 sort of key reasons of its success are firstly comms. And it actually came out in the research today that Lisa just mentioned that we commissioned with UN Women, that there's a sort of a bit of a lack of global communications on this topic. And so I think, you know, we work very hard with our partners and our local markets to deliver sort of high quality comms for 16 days of activism in November. And we are releasing one on Friday as well, of course, for International Women's Day. And I'd just echo what everyone else has already said about the sort of value of partnerships. Bright Sky really wouldn't be as successful as it has been without all of the partners, you know, at a local level and a global level. And the more we can partner with local governments and global organisations, the more we can scale, which is what we plan to do with Bright Sky.
Thank you so much. I'm going to ask you a question that's not quite on our list, but I think it'd be really interesting. You know, women in tech is a subject all on its own, you know, that we could talk about for a very long period of time. But as apps program manager at the Vodafone Foundation, I suppose my question is, when you are developing apps like this, for you, what's the most important thing? Like, what's the thing that's like, this is the nugget, this is the thing for me that I want to nail, I want to get it right?
So I think the user and the purpose of that specific app is always at the center of what we're doing. So, you know, all of our apps, which I mentioned, they sort of have a core purpose, but they're all slightly different and they're all slightly nuanced to a sort of certain set of the population. So Bright Sky is obviously for anyone who's worried about domestic abuse, but we have another app, Sateria, which is more aligned to hate crime. And I think making sure that we are always providing the correct support for those people is at the core of what we do. You know, we obviously at Vodafone are not the specialists, and we have to work closely with our charity partners to make sure that those people are satisfied, and, you know, we would always respond quickly if they're not, and change things. So I think for me, that is always the #1 focus for the apps.
That's fabulous. Thank you so much, Jemima. So I'm moving on to TikTok now. This is kind of the name that we keep hearing over and over again. So Liz, you are the issue policy manager for trust and safety at TikTok. And now, obviously, there's a range of challenges that face TikTok when it comes to ensuring safety users. You've grown so quickly, so much has happened, there's so much content. And one of the biggest challenges is managing literally this sheer volume of content. I know my children are constantly, who are in the, you know, they're in their 20s, but constantly sending me links to TikToks. So, you know, so much uploaded every single day. So to address this, I know that you've at TikTok have implemented a number of safety measures. So in your experience, you know, what are the safety challenges that TikTok faces, and what are the features that it has? You know, we've heard features about other things, and it'd be really great to hear what TikTok's features are.
Great. Thank you, Madeline. And thank you, No More, for having us as part of this dynamic panel. We're really excited to be here today. And you're going to hear me echo, I think, a lot of what other folks have said on the call, that safety is incredibly important to us and is embedded in everything that we do. We have an incredible team of trust and safety professionals who are working around the world, including gender-based violence subject matter experts who are working on these safety issues every day. I think one of the challenges that we face is similar to what I've heard others share when they were speaking, is that the trends and kind of harmful behavior are always evolving and changing. And we need to stay ahead of it, right? And be able to think about what harm might look like, what abuse might look like, and how can we prevent and respond to that on our platform. It means that we have to be always innovative and flexible while making sure that we're staying principled and really grounded in safety and trauma-informed approaches for survivors. We work collaboratively with subject matter experts around the world to understand and address new harms and risks. And these partnerships with these experts help us to gain insight and perspectives about what's happening on the ground and what the impact is for individuals. And we use that information to help inform our policies and our product design so that we can always enhance our safety. And just to speak for a second about the experts that we're partnering with, we work with 8 safety advisory councils that we have in different regions around the world. They're gender-based violence experts on each of those councils who review safety issues with both a regional and a global lens and provide feedback to us regularly. And then outside of our safety advisory councils, we also have frequent engagements with gender-based violence experts so that we can continue to enhance our knowledge and continue to use that information to inform the work that we're doing. So when we think about safety, we are thinking about our policies, such as the rules for what you're allowed to do on the platform, but also our product design, such as the tools that help people to safely engage with the platform. So one area that I'd like to highlight for our product design are the tools that we provide families, such as our family pairing tool, which allows parents to restrict content that may be unsuitable for young people and also implement screen time limits for youth. We also have general screen time management tools for everyone to use that help people to engage safely with the platform and in a way that lifts up and supports their digital well-being as well. You can find all of this information in our well-being guide, which shares information about how people can have a healthy and balanced relationship with digital devices and online content. We also have our community guidelines, which is where we talk about our rules for the platform. And this is a really important way for us to help to create a safe and trustworthy and vibrant experience for everybody who's using TikTok. The guidelines include rules for what's allowed on TikTok, as well as standards for what's eligible for their For You feed. And it's important to us that our guidelines are clear and accessible and transparent. So in addition to our rules and standards, we also include definitions, examples, and clarifications to common questions so that people can really understand what our policies are and what's allowed and not allowed on the platform. We have within the community guidelines, the rules kind of separated by subject areas, and you'll find there are subsections within the community guidelines that are specifically focused on sexual and domestic abuse. And then in addition to our community guidelines, we also have a safety center, which we're really happy to have, where you can find access to information about all kinds of safety topics, including sexual abuse. And on our Sexual Abuse Safety Center page, there's contact information for service providers in 30 countries, which we are very excited to have there because it helps us to give information and education to survivors, but also to help them connect with localized resources and support for any needs that they might have. It also includes information about how to report content on the platform. So any content that might be a violation, but also content such as image-based sexual abuse. And within our safety center, we highlight our partnerships with both Stop NCII and Take It Down, which are 2 of our global partners we work with to help people report intimate images that were shared without consent, and also help us to proactively detect and remove those images as well. So we really think that TikTok can be a place of community and connection for survivors of domestic and sexual abuse. And we really want to make sure the platform is a safe space for them, but also a place to get information and education too.
There's a lot of work that's clearly being done. I have got a question that's come in on the Q&A that I'd like to kind of pull in because, and it mentions bullying, because bullying is, you know, it's a close cousin, isn't it, of sexual and domestic violence. And content, I think user-generated content is a runaway train. I think it's virtually impossible to, not impossible, but certainly difficult to control what people will put on their platforms, on platforms, because you can't be sitting next to them all day, every day. It's just not possible. But one of the things was just about bullying and how you deal with bullying. You know, the question is, you know, I'd love to hear how TikTok deal with users bullying people, some things I've heard and seen and say it's vile and it says nothing is ever done. I suppose one of the biggest challenges is when you're dealing with something that's this huge, it's difficult to actually address every single piece of content that is uploaded into the system. But from a bullying point of view, especially when we think about our topic of sexual and domestic violence, what do you as an organization do, and what are your aims, I suppose, because I think there's so much you can do, and then there's the kind of things that you're aiming for.
Yeah, thank you for that question. So we take bullying very seriously, and we have a whole dedicated team who is working on that issue every day. We don't allow bullying and harassment on the platform, and that includes sexual harassment as well. In addition to our other sexual abuse policies. So we kind of look holistically at the issue. Yes, there is a lot of content on the platform, but we work with that large team of trust and safety professionals to review that content and make sure that we're applying our rules and identifying when content is violative and removing that content when it is. We also encourage our users of the platform to report content that they see as violative, either in-app, and they can find information and directions on how to do that in our safety centers or other help centers or in the platform itself. But we don't allow bullying and harassment, and we take that issue very seriously and are continuing to think about and evolve the ways that we approach it.
Thank you so much for your answer. I really appreciate it. Okay, so one last question actually for you, and it has actually come up, which is where can users find information on safety? So I know there's a number of like if I was to sit in this app, where would I go?
Yeah, so information about safety can be found in a couple of different places and always can be found in our community guidelines as well as our safety centers, which can be accessed within the app as well as on our website. We do have a website too, where this information can be found also. And so depending on within the tools itself, I don't know that I can specifically describe exactly on this call, but they're pretty easily accessible and found within the buttons that we have on the platform, and being able to quickly kind of link to the different safety sections that we have or to the rules. I will say that reporting violative content is incredibly easy. Long holding on a video will bring up those options for you and let you quickly and easily report content.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. So just this one goes out to both Uber and Match and No More actually in Safety Net. So the question is, and I'll pick somebody who hasn't spoken for a long time, is how can technology better support survivors and make their experience more accessible and more seamless? So I'm going to go to Erica. What would that be for you?
There's so much there, but I think I'll narrow down on time, and think about survivors' first experiences when they are trying to find supportive services. I always try to think about like when we're looking at survivors' engagement with a company, kind of what does that look like from start to finish? And each piece of that journey needs to be really critically examined and taken apart in its own. But I think starting with the very first layer of that is like, what do survivors see when they first search for information, come to your site, open up the app? There's a lot of examples of I think minimization that can happen of what survivors are experiencing just by types of abuse just not being named. We need to make sure that abuse, harassment, unwanted surveillance, unwanted messages, bullying, we need to make sure that we are naming the things that people are experiencing when we are saying, what would you like to report? How, what would you like support on? I think that first and foremost that people need to see experiences that they're having in the language that the general population uses. And that's really important to just to like see those experiences mirrored back and see a path that is not overly complicated, that is pretty simplistic to say, like, what do you need, and how, a very clear path of how to get a hold of somebody. Also, the really important thing that should be in that upfront process is privacy disclaimers. Survivors should be making informed choices all the way through when they are communicating with a company of what could happen when they share that information. So, if it's anonymous, if it's confidential, the things that we think about as victim service providers, it's such an ingrained part of our work to lead those conversations with survivors with this kind of upfront message of any limitations that might exist to confidentiality, to privacy. And we need to do that in the tech spaces as well, and just let people know, and I think you can see examples of that even on like in social media spaces, where it's very clearly stated that if you report somebody or block someone, like that person is not going to know that you are the individual who reported them. Like that little tidbit of information can just be a significant relief for somebody who's worried about retaliation and continued abuse.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's so simple, isn't it? Anonymizing me, so then I'm not then put up for more harassment. Elise, what about for you? The sort of the support that we can do to make it really seamless and accessible.
Yes, I think I'll build off of Erica's response a little bit here, and perhaps provide kind of a reflection from a tech company perspective, or from Uber's perspective a little bit here. And I think, Erica, as you were alluding to, when someone is experiencing violence, the options that are available to them when it comes to reporting to a company like us is really important, and that it really matters. And we've learned that reporting just has such kind of a deeply personal, it's just such a deeply personal decision for folks to make. And so making that reporting process and being very thoughtful about that reporting process and design is just so critical. And so we've come to understand that thinking through what kind of reporting options you have available are going to impact whether a survivor is going to report to us at all, how they're going to feel after they report, what their well-being will be like. And for other companies, it can, and for us too, it can really influence the number of reports we receive, and then our ability to take action on those reports. So I think for us, having multiple reporting channels available to survivors is really important. So we have things within the app, we have features within the app where folks can report directly to us in the event that they experience violence in relation to our platform. We have safety reporting lines that folks can call. We're able to receive reports from law enforcement, from social media. So there are a number of different ways that those reports can get to us, and trying to continue to make those better is really important. And then I think when someone does make that call, or does kind of take that step, as Erica was kind of outlining, I think having folks on our side who are trauma informed, who are survivor centered, who can respond and point to resources. Like in the US, we have a partnership with RAIN on a survivor resource hotline and fund, and providing that information up front is really critical. So I think it's really important to, as you've kind of said, think about the ways that we can make things more accessible, make things more seamless, and hopefully improve the survivor's experience on the platform.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Tasha, what about you? Is there anything that really sticks out, that comes to mind when you're thinking about that accessibility and seamlessness?
I'll be honest with you. I think both Erica and Elise have responded well to this. I don't have much to add. I agree with everything that they're saying. I think for me, it's just about really understanding that survivors are not a monolith, and so really our role as a tech company who, may not always have the same things top of mind as maybe a victim service agency does. I think our role is really to create the space for survivors to tell us how technology better support them. And for, advocates and others who are working every day, like, Erica and Pamela, with survivors and survivor groups, to help us inform us in exactly the way Erica just did, right? And kind of walk us through, here are all those, kind of key points where we should really be thinking about how we can make this trauma informed. Because even if you're not a survivor of sexual and domestic violence, we've all had some form of trauma. And so if we're creating and designing our technology with that as a foundation, it's really making it better for everybody.
Yeah, thank you so much. There's so many gems, so many nuggets that have come out. Pamela, you've been working in this area for a very long time. And so listening to what you've heard, is there anything that kind of stands out to you or that you'd like to highlight in this area when you're thinking about how users experience technology?
Yes, I think in true, it feels like the answer has gone from back to kind of front with, with Erica, Elise, and Tasha. And so it's more kind of a bigger message where technology is here to, to lead us at the moment. It's here to stay. Like, we can't keep on criticizing the advance of technology as the worst thing that ever happened to the gender-based violence sector, right? Like, it's something that we have to kind of be able to work through and work with partners. And so I think is, building on what Tasha said, is that kind of first kind of phase, right? Are we building technology in general that can cause harm, right? Even if that's not the audience. So it's from the building, the inception of modeling, all of this technology that is to come, what is the probability that it has of creating harm? And if it is, what are the bits that need to be inbuilt in it to, really, we want to progress, but we don't want the harm that comes with progress, right? So let's kind of look at that, at that first step, because then all the other things come, right? Like, what Elise was talking about, this kind of great reporting, trauma informed. That's what we want to hear, right? We want to hear companies that take reporting seriously, especially because, as I've been highlighting almost every session today, we are getting to the stage where people are preferring to go to a company to report than to go to law enforcement. So the responsibility is so high, now, that we really need to be able to make this correctly for users and their experience. But if we could start at the very beginning, and there are many products developing at the moment, and we just need to make sure that they cause us less harm as possible.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Liz, I just wanted to ask, what kind of challenges and lessons do you think you've learned in improving your products for the safety of users experiencing domestic and sexual violence?
Yeah, thank you for that. So I think one, I'll reiterate a little bit what I shared earlier, because I think it's still relevant here too, is that one of the lessons we've learned, or the challenges we continue to face, is that bad actors in this space, right, continue to change and evolve the way that they cause harm. And so we're constantly thinking creatively to develop both responsible and impactful approaches and solutions here, and trying to stay right one step ahead. And the other thing that I would say here is that we believe it's really important to take a holistic approach when looking at sexual and domestic abuse. So kind of losing like a tiered framework or design to think about these issues and the ways that we can be responsive to these issues through the work that we're doing. So we look at both reactive approaches, proactive approaches. We're focusing on intervention, like our policy enforcement of our rules. We're looking at prevention, like user education, and what's the messaging that we can share around these issues proactively within the platform as people engage with content. And then we're also working with partners so that we can continue to strengthen the content that we do share related to these issues, making sure that we're using trauma-informed language, thinking about the accessibility of the information that we're sharing, and thinking about the different touch points that users might have and that survivors might have with our platform and our materials and digital assets, and the ways that we make those friendly to them and approachable, and really thinking about grounding survivor-centered approaches and all of that work.
Okay, thank you. Lisa, what about for you? And Lisa and Jemima, lessons learned on this journey of, making everything safe and creating all of these impactful apps. What are the big lessons that have come out for you? Well, especially with regards to domestic and sexual violence.
I think for me, and Jemima, may have her own views, but I think one of the things I've found very interesting is the importance of raising awareness of the issue and how you can use technology to do that. Because I think, still people tend to think of it in a very narrow sense. They don't think of the wider ways in which abuse can occur. And we've used campaigns very imaginatively to try and get those messages across and to help people really understand what the issues are. Our latest campaign, as Jemima mentioned, which launches hopefully later this week, is very much focused on TikTok. So we have a campaign which we're launching on TikTok specifically to reach more users and to raise that awareness in a very creative way. So I think that's the way in which we can think of technology slightly differently as well. It reaches a mass audience. It reaches much more than would have been possible before those platforms were there. So it's a great opportunity in a way to educate. Jemima, you may want to add to that.
Yeah, thank you. I think in terms of lessons learned, managing all the apps, things do go wrong and it's kind of fine. And I think like apps need sort of constant attention and, constant releases and things like that. And it's sort of helpful that we have so many, because if something does go wrong, we can just learn from it and then make sure it doesn't happen again going forward. So I think, sort of collaborative working is really key for sort of, trying to fix issues and making sure that we sort of apply it to the whole board and work together on fixing it.
Great, thank you so much. So it's not one last question, I've got a couple more, but the question I really want to ask is, how is your company, and I'm happy to allow anyone, I'm going to do sort of like give you the controls. So it's going to be who can unmute your mic first. So how has your company been a driving force in this, transforming how we use technology, or what technology can do to keep survivors of domestic and sexual abuse safe? Like what has been that thing that's really driven you as an organization to make transformation in your apps or platforms? Lisa is first to the gate and she's on it.
I would say, I think what we have done, which I think is really good, is we've taken a very holistic approach. So, taking the knowledge from the research, implementing policies for our employees, looking at how we can support communities, looking at how we can support other companies to do more. I think that's really important, to look at it end to end and not just try and address one small part of the issue. That for us has been a very important thing that we feel very strongly about, and we're very keen to help other companies, whoever they are, banks, technology companies, anyone, to do more in this area.
Okay, thank you. You got any other answers? Everyone's like,
I can jump in. I think for us, I love this question because I feel like for us at Match Group and across the various dating apps that are under our kind of umbrella, we really have an opportunity to empower survivors of sexual and domestic violence when it comes to technology. I think often when someone is a survivor of these particular forms of harm, the community, their friends, their family, sometimes even advocates, we take a fear-based approach when we're talking to that person, and they're considering kind of jumping into using technology again, or trying to jump in and start having new relationships and experiences. And so for us, I think we really focus on what are the ways that we could give a survivor agency throughout every step of this process of their dating journey. And I think one of the positive things about starting a new connection online is that it does actually give you much more control than if you're having that first encounter, in real life. So So from every part of the journey for us, we're trying to embed kind of education and tips in there for survivors. You know, as you're creating your profile, what are the things you can think about when it comes to safety and privacy? What are the things you want to make sure you don't have in your background photo? You know, what's the information you might want to be mindful about not sharing? As you're looking through, you know, your different potential matches, or you're talking to new people, like that's an opportunity to look for green flags and red flags and maybe reevaluate and learn those for yourself, right? If you're coming out of, you know, if you've just experienced, you know, victimization, or you're coming out of a relationship that was harmful, sometimes you're kind of relearning about yourself and you're trying to reclaim your own sexuality and your own identity. And I honestly think, you know, in using a dating app, there's a lot more space to do that, as long as that person has, you know, the support they need, whatever that looks like. And so I think what we're trying to do is give people different tools based on where they're at, because everybody's healing journey is different. So I think for us that's probably the most important way we're trying to create transformation for survivors when it comes to kind of getting back in the game and dating and building new relationships.
That's so true. I think recognizing that we're not all a monolith, that we are all individual people. I always say that, you know, we're complex human beings, and just remembering that. And even the way we access information, even the way we use an app, you know, somebody's going to go and have read all the safety information. Somebody's just going to have jumped on and got with it, you know. And so there is this real importance that we recognize the diversity in the way that we operate. So I really love that point. Elise, oh no, Liz is she's gone for it. She beat me, Elise.
Go for it.
Sorry, I'll just add something else. I think with our platform, right, we can reach a very wide audience, and particularly with the virality of content on our platform. And I think so excited to hear that Vodafone is planning an awareness campaign on TikTok. And I wanted to add that that's something that we've done in the past, is we've worked in partnership with our community partners to do awareness campaigns on the platform, and really be able to leverage the audience that we can reach, and be able to make sure that we're using that in ways that are helpful and supportive for people, and using it to raise awareness about issues like this, as well as campaigns on other related safety and harm issues too. I think I also think it's important to call out too that TikTok's also a place of community and connection, right? Madeline, you talked about how your family finds joy in using TikTok together, and how your children are sharing videos with you. And so we recognize that it's this place of community and connection for survivors of abuse as well. And we run the platform to be a really safe space for that, and for a place where people can find information and education. And we're always continuing to review the ways that survivors use the platform for healing, so that we can assess the responsiveness of our platform and make sure we're creating that safe space for them to do so.
Okay, great, thank you so much. It's true, it is community, and sometimes, again, the complexity of the things that we use, we sometimes forget that they apply to lots of different aspects and areas of our lives. Elise.
Yeah, thank you. I think I'll echo what a number of folks have already said, but I think a priority for us continues to be to use our scale to raise awareness when it comes to issues like sexual violence and sexual assault. Uber is completing 26 million trips a day around the world in over 10,000 cities. And so you can imagine that our reach is large. And I think I think it's important to kind of recognize the scale that companies like ours have, and the reach that you have. And what do you do with that opportunity? And what do you do with those? And what do you do with the resources that you have available to you? And so we've been able to launch a number of educational campaigns and awareness campaigns. We've partnered with No More on Don't Stand By campaigns to prevent sexual violence from occurring in the first place. We've also done campaigns on college campuses, which have been really successful. In the US in particular, we managed to send messages to campus to students who are being picked up or dropped off on college campuses at over 2,000 colleges across the US. And so they would get in-app messages about our safety features, about how to stay safe on the platform, especially when they're in a new city and in college for the first time, and particularly at the beginning of the year during what is often called the red zone, a time when you're most at risk for things like sexual assault and sexual violence. So I think just kind of echoing the opportunity to reach millions of people around the world, and whether it be sexual violence, whether it be human trafficking, just thinking about how we can be that driving force for transformation and to have really important conversations and not be afraid to have those conversations with the folks who use our platform.
Yeah, I really love that. I think, when we think about, we say names, but we don't realize what that means. When we hear Match, or we hear Uber, or we hear TikTok, or we hear Vodafone, we don't recognize sometimes that it's like little nation states of users, that you're actually dealing with. It's a huge amount of people. And it's, again, I'll go back to, and each one of those is a complex human being that you're having to tailor your services, your platforms, your organization to. So I truly want to say that I appreciate the scale of what you're trying to do when you consider the number of people that you're actually engaging with on a daily basis. I mean, even just hearing that, like 26 million journeys per day, it's a huge amount of journeys when you think about it. And I know we could say the same for TikTok, in the amount of user content or the users, and the same for Vodafone, the same for Match as well. So I want to ask a final question, and Pamela, I'm going to end with you. You are not forgotten there. I haven't forgotten you. You are not Johnny No Mates today, I promise you. So the final question, I'm a coach, so I'm always going to go with one of my coaching questions. There's always going to be a one thing question. So going forward, what is the one thing that your organization will be doing to prevent or respond to tech facilitated abuse? That one thing that you're going to be doing. So I'm going to start, Erica, you began. So I know you're a safety organization, but I'm starting with you.
Oh, happy to start. I think our one thing, we are very focused on working directly with service providers. So we strive to build the capacity of the service providers, the advocates, professionals on the ground that are working with survivors. So we are trying to give them training, resources to respond to their needs around this particular issue, to build their capacity to answer the questions that survivors have, which are always evolving. What we have found in talking with service providers is that the thing that they're identifying mostly is that they want more tools to help them assess what might be happening. And I think that's where we're going to be spending a lot of our energy, because survivors are often not coming in saying, this person is doing this and like very specifically identifying it. It's often really broad. This person knows where I am. They're harassing me across all of these platforms. And so it's kind of an overwhelming task to either identify what exactly the abuser is doing, or identify the strategies to address it, increase the privacy, security, get the abuser out of accounts. And so our focus is really on getting victim service providers that information so they can be prepared for those conversations.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Tasha,
you.
what's your one thing?
It's a little bit of a two-part thing, Madeline. I apologize, but I would say, first and foremost, our team is really, our trust and safety team is really focused on continuing to develop product and working closely with partners to ensure that that product is well informed and also consistent across our entire portfolio. So you may have heard as I was speaking, some apps have certain safety features right now that others don't, and we want to make that uniform across, as I said, our entire company. But I think one of the things that's most important in conjunction with that, and I think this kind of bounces off what Erica was saying, which is that education and socialization piece. I mean, I think we all can remember, I'll say 20 years, but I think it's honestly less than that, where when advocates were doing safety planning, we didn't talk about technology. And there's still plenty of victim service organizations today, right, that are not talking about the role of Facebook and dating apps and TikTok and all of these different platforms, right, in safety planning with someone. And I think we have an important role in supporting those organizations and doing that and informing them about what our platforms do and what different features we have available. And so for us, that's an important investment, is not kind of creating those features and those policies, but informing people about them. And the best way to do that is by leveraging and resourcing the networks of our community partners across the globe.
Hey, thank you so much. Elise.
Tasha, I agree with a lot of the things that you've kind of articulated there. And I think for us, safety's not stopping. We're not taking our foot off the pedal. There's always more work that we can do. And that work doesn't happen without advocate partnerships. And so continuing our commitment to ending gender-based violence means supporting the work that advocate partners are doing. And so we've recently announced a commitment of $10 million over 5 years for community partnerships that are working to end gender-based violence. And we call these folks our driving change partners. And we have these partners in Canada, in the US, in Brazil, in Mexico, in Australia, in South Africa. And these are the folks who shape our safety journey. These are the folks that are making safety an integral part of the work that we do. And they're inspiring the safety features. They're inspiring the campaigns that reach millions of people around the world. So I think for us, it's continuing to invest in those advocate partnerships to make changes not only within our app, but also in the communities that we serve.
Thank you so much. I appreciate investment is going to make a difference for sure. Jemima, considering kind of like from the app's point of view, because I'm sure that Lisa's going to do the overall, but for you and your department and the work that you do, what's that one thing?
I think that the one thing for us going forward is probably growth of the program. You know, it's at a great place now in 13 markets for Bright Sky, but there's obviously many more countries that would really hugely benefit from the program, and we want to enable as many people as possible access to this vital platform. You know, we launched in the US last March with Pamela and the No More Foundation, and that enabled a further 147 million women in the US access to the platform. So that is definitely our key end goal, is to make it as wide and open as we possibly can.
Thank you so much. Wow, numbers are just amazing to me. Lisa.
Yes, completely support Jemima's point, but I would yes say a little bit wider than that. And it was interesting. We were at a conference earlier today with UN Women, and our HR director had a very interesting quote, which is, "If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go further, go together." So my point would be, we need to work together, get those safe spaces on all websites as much as we can, get everyone aware of Bright Sky to the extent possible, and share the knowledge that we have in terms of supporting our own employees.
Thank you so much. Liz?
Oh gosh, it's hard to focus on just one.
Always is.
I know there's so many things here, but I think broadly I would say, kind of echoing what other folks have said too, is that we're working always on continuing to build our product and policies related to exploitation and abuse, specifically in a way that's survivor-centered and trauma-informed. And while we have a whole host of experts on a wonderful trust and safety team here, we recognize that partnering with experts from around the world is really one of the most impactful ways that we could do that. Those discussions that we have and the partnerships that we develop with other folks, it will always continue to inform our work and ensure that our responses and initiatives are grounded in the experiences and needs of survivors. So being here today on this call, expanding our network, growing our partnerships in these ways is one of the things that we're most excited to do.
Love it. This is just so good. So Pamela, I'm going to slightly tweak your question, because obviously we're an organization that's seeking to make an impact and certainly wanting to grow, build partnerships and all of the things. So for you, if you had one wish, one thing that for no more would be the biggest thing that would make the biggest difference to, or an impactful difference to the work that we do, what would that be for you?
The ability of connecting in a meaningful way grassroots organizations all over the world in a very kind of proactive, elaborate, community-based way, which the technology is there to enable that. I think we kind of need to kind of give that further step, because today we've had 12 sessions. I'm going to say my thing, Madeline.
Go on. Say your thing.
I was ready with my thing. Today we've had 12 sessions, from around the globe, and we need to keep talking about this in a global way, because we are having problems with pretty much the same actors everywhere, right? So really, really, I think, and they're having particular issues also in different areas of the world. But just being able to hear that someone in Australia today in the morning seems to have the same problem, and somebody in Argentina who is we unfortunately have a session who the government has taken the late speaker's job away in the last 2 days after the interview was done, because it's an ultra-right government at the moment, right? And knowing that all of that is facing, all of us, we need to keep our channels open. And so for me, it's definitely, we need to get, sometimes, and I'm extending here, but some of the big organizations like NNEDV or No More, we keep very good links, but actually those grassroots organizations and all countries of the world have no communication with. So we need to bring them up. We need to elevate their voices and be able to connect them with you, fabulous group of, corporations that are doing, the bits of work that, are getting you to have safer products.
Thank you so much. We have actually, all the questions that we had have been answered in one formal fashion, or we will be answering them. I don't believe we have any more. But what I would like to say is it's so great to, considering that we are in International Women's Month and we are in the No More Week, to have a range of women from different organizations all talking about the change, the impact, and the work that they are doing for transformation for those people who are experiencing domestic and sexual violence. It's phenomenal. And it's been said many times today, just about awareness, communication, collaboration, sharing policies, signpointing people to where they can be, and also just ensuring that we are using what's already there is just amazing. And again, the fact that whilst we're all complex human beings, there are no new problems, they're not new issues, they're the same issues, they're just being played out in different ways in different places in our world. So the more we talk about it, the more we raise the profile of it, the more we raise awareness, because it's not that there isn't anything. Today you've shown us that there are lots of things, lots of tools, lots of apps, lots of different ways of accessing information that we have that literally is at our fingertips. And I say that because I'm old enough to remember if I wanted any information, I would have to go to the library and I'd be using microfiche. And some of you are wondering, what the hell is she talking about? Because it's just, you've never experienced it. There's others of us who have. And so that's I feel that's phenomenal in the sense that it is here in our fingertips. The information is there, the support is there, and the more awareness that we can build is going to make a difference. So it's so good to hear the steps that are being taken to prevent and respond to tech-facilitated abuse. For all of us, even small actions can make a massive difference in creating a respectful and more safer environment and aligned. That might be, I found the safety stuff, here's where you find it, just sharing that information. So I want to thank each of you, but before I do my final roundup, what I would like to just say is that we have a video from our founder and chair of No More Board, Jane Randall, that we would like to share at this moment as we close this session.
Hello, my name is Jane Randall, and I'm the co-founder and chair of No More. I'm honored to welcome you to the No More Week 2024 Tech Conference, Silicon Saviors or Digital Threats, exploring tech's impact on domestic and sexual violence. Today, we're convening experts, advocates, and innovators from across the world for this one-day virtual event, which will explore how tech is being used to stalk, harass, and harm survivors, but also how it's being used to enhance safety, connectivity, and prevent or minimize abuse. No More was created to be an open source awareness, prevention, and intervention campaign. Our mission is not just about raising awareness, it's about driving real change in policies, behaviors, and social norms. Today, we've gathered some of the brightest minds from around the world to start a global conversation about embracing technology as a tool for change. From AI-powered safety apps to blockchain-enabled victim services, we are witnessing incredible innovations that, when used correctly, have the potential to save lives and empower survivors. Together, let's harness the power of technology to create a world where no one lives in fear, no one suffers in silence, and no one is left behind. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey. Have a great day.
Thank you so much, Jane. So just before I close, I just want to remind everybody that there is still time to sign up and join No More's 5K walk, which is a fundraiser. So all you need to do is visit nomore.org to register. Get involved, you know, whether it's a team, whether you do it by yourself, definitely just do it. You've still got a few more days left for this event. You can run, you can walk, you can swim, you can skip. It's up to you what you choose to do. If you want to cartwheel the 5K, go ahead, just do it. But every movement and every penny that is raised counts towards helping us make change in this vital area. So this is the one thing that you can do to be the difference. It's our responsibility. This is our world. We all need to be the change that we want to see. So this week has been, this session has been part of this No More's Week. Today is our conference, Silicon Survivors or Digital Threats, exploring tech's impact on domestic and sexual violence. And this has been the Tech Innovators Roundtable. I would like to thank each and every one of our participants. That's Erica, that's Elise, that's Jemima, Liz, Tasha, Lisa, and Pamela for being here. They have donated their time. I'm sure they've got lots of things that they need to be doing. Their list is very long. They've shared their knowledge. They've shared about their organizations as well. And I can tell you, I've paneled and I've been a moderator, I've hosted, and I can tell you not every organization is willing to actually have an open conversation. So we really appreciate the time that you've shared with us today. And I have gone off piece with a couple of people and they still answer the questions. So again, I truly, truly appreciate it. Thank you to everyone for attending. Our next session will take place straight after this, and we'll focus on a video game with the aim of preventing sexual violence. Way Out, an app to eradicate rape culture. Thank you so much. Stay with us and have a great day.